The AP chemistry exam can be overwhelming because it's not just about what your team knows, it's about how they show it. And in the free response section alone, students can lose major points because of how they present their answers, not necessarily because they didn't know the answer to the question. That's why in this episode, I'm walking you through what your team should do instead of those common test day mistakes that cost them points. These are quick habits that they can incorporate now that will make a big difference on their exam. So grab a cup of coffee and let's dive in. Welcome to Teaching High School Science. I'm your host, Doc, a former biochemist turned high school science teacher and private tutor. Whether you're homeschooling your teen through high school science or teaching online, join me as I share tips and strategies I've learned over the years for at-home and online labs and activities, breaking down complex concepts and structuring learning in a way that makes sense. Now, let's dive into today's topics. Okay, before we get started, if you want the full list, including a few bonus tips that I won't have time to go over in today's episode, check out the blog post that I have linked in my show notes. There are 15 total tips that can help your student on the AP Chem free response section. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that I stress with my students the entire year, and that is writing legibly. That includes everything that is written, from your written out word-based answers to setups and units. And this is because the FRQ section is graded by real people. And if the grader cannot read or has to question what was written, then you do not get those points. It will not even count, even if you know what you wrote was correct. The next thing is using the correct variables. For example, in chemistry, we have the concepts of molarity and molality. Molarity has a variable of a capital M, where molality has a variable of a lowercase m. These are two different things, and using the wrong symbol can suggest a misunderstanding, even if you know the correct answer, and that can cost you partial or full credit. So using the correct variables can save points. Now this leads to the next point eating habit for the AP Chem FRQ, and that is either skipping or using made up abbreviations for units. For example, that lowercase m indicates molality, but MOL indicates moles. Even though the question is clearly talking about stoichiometry or moles, if your team just abbreviates mole and use M, they lose points because that is not what is indicated by that unit or that variable. And on the other hand, if they include no variables or units, that's the same as including none, ensuring that you're using variables and using the correct variables. No abbreviations, no made up, but the correct ones will ensure that you're getting all of your points. Now that we've talked about units and variables, let's talk about showing work. Remember this, that AP graders want to award partial credit if the answer is not correct. We want to give credit, but we cannot give credit if we do not follow your logic or if you don't show us your logic. So writing down each and every step you use to solve the problem will allow us to follow your logic. And if for some reason, at some point, a sign was different, or there was a miscalculation, or maybe some mistake in putting the numbers into your calculator occurred, but we see that you understood all of the processes, then you still get partial credit. So what does setting up a problem looks like? If there is an equation, for example, if you're asked to calculate the bond energy of a molecule and you're given different bonds and their enthalpies, then write the equation as is first, and then show where you plugged in your numbers and each step you use to solve that problem. If it's a stoichiometry, make sure you have a balanced chemical equation, and then make sure you show each step with the complete units in each step that you use to solve that. And that helps us to see your logic and that you know what you're doing. The next tip is to make sure that you are answering all parts of a question. For example, if you're given a comparison question, such as compare the bonds between H2O or H2S, or compare the boiling points of H2O and H2S, then saying something like water has a higher boiling point because of hydrogen bonding, that's very weak, and you may lose points because you did not discuss the bonds or the intermolecular forces more specifically of both molecules. You want to identify those forces in both and then discuss which ones are stronger and why. That will provide you with full credit. And the last tip is to make sure you are not hiding your answer in more words. If we have to pull out the answer and it's disguised, then you do not get credit. That's something that I call a prompt bounce. That means that you have reworded or restated the question in your answer without actually answering the question. Graders look for a direct answer first. If it's buried, then they may miss it. Ensuring that your response is direct, short, clear, readable, and answers every part of the question is a sure way to show your logic, show that you understand and know the answer, which will lead to full credit. Now, if your team need extra support in practicing these skills or reviewing for AP Chem exam, check out the link that I have in the show notes to my tutoring services, which I offer on OutSchool. Also in my show notes, I've linked my blog that has even more of these tips than what was included in this podcast. Let me know if you have any questions, ideas, or other experiences that you'd like to share. Head on over to my podcast page, which you can access by visiting my website at thesciencementor.com. Then select podcast from the menu and subscribe now to the Teaching High School Science podcast for your regular dose of motivation and just-in-time science ideas. And together, let's make high school science a journey of exploration and achievement. Until next time, remember, curiosity leads to endless possibilities.